Good morning, friends. I am Captain Dr. D.K. Ramawat, working as a non-invasive cardiologist since 20 years at Ramawat Heart and General Medicine Hospital, Badmer, Rajasthan, India. Today, we are going to discuss the part 2 of STEMI, ST elevation myocardial infarction. The last time we have taken the part 1, and in part 1 we have taken the point early triage, order of treatment and pre-hospital management of ST elevation myocardial infarction in rural and urban India. And today, now we will start part 2 from management of STEMI at PCI non-capable center. Listen again, we are going to discuss STEMI at PCI non-capable center. So, our topic was management of STEMI in Indian perspective. Now, our fifth point of the second part, management of STEMI at PCI non-capable center. The role of PCI non-capable center includes the following 4 points. Number 1, maintain the first medical contact to balloon time less than 120 minutes. If transport time is more than 120 minutes, then thrombolyze the patient and shift to a PCI capable center for a PI pharmaco-invasive approach. This is number 1. Now the second, what we have to do at non-capable PCI, give 325 milligram of the soluble aspirin by buccal route, and given the oxygen, if oxygen saturation is less than 90% only, make a whiteboard intravenous access and administer morphine to allay anxiety and fear. Give nitrates if continue chest pain sublingually or intravenous. The third point, we will start the optimum medical therapy with statin, ACE inhibitor and beta blockers. And the fourth, we will do what? We will start thrombolytics and antithrombotics is given, and thrombolysis should be started within 30 minutes by qualified medical person, where facility of ECG, defibrillator and resuscitation measures are available. Anticoagulation with heparin initiated. You can take photograph of this figure by your mobile and read in leisure time. Now, the sixth point, management of STEMI at PCI capable center. So before it was non-capable center, PCI non-capable, but now we have come to PCI capable center. Primary PCI is the gold standard for management of STEMI. Here 3 clinical scenarios need to be discussed. Number 1, non-thrombolyzed patient presenting less than 12 hours of onset of chest pain. Number 2, non-thrombolyzed patient presenting 12 to 24 hours from onset of chest pain. Then the third, thrombolyzed. First and 2 were non-thrombolyzed patient, and third is thrombolyzed patient, which is who is presenting less than 24 hours of onset of the chest pain. So now, the first point, non-thrombolyzed patient presenting less than 12 hours of the onset of chest pain. Every passing minute without reperfusion indicates what? Every passing minute without reperfusion indicates lost opportunity for salvaging myocardium. You are not able to salvage the myocardium. Therefore, management of in this period is time is muscle. As you lose the time, you are losing the muscle of heart. If you start reperfusion early, muscles are salvaged. Now the coronary occlusion radically altered by an adequate intervention as late as 3 hours after coronary occlusion. Then it will be salvaging the myocardium. Now the primary PCI also decreases the rate of recurrent ischemia, reinfarction, death as compared to thrombolysis. Then the time delay to reperfusion are associated with worse clinical outcomes. Delay in primary PCI by more than 120 minutes neutralizes the beneficial effect of mechanical reperfusion. Whenever the expected delay exceeds 60 minutes, thrombolytic therapy should be promptly initiated. Whenever the expected delay exceeds 60 minutes, thrombolytic therapy should be promptly initiated as a part of pharmaco-invasive approach. So now, management strategies for patient of STEMI presenting to a PCI capable hospital. This is a STEMI before 12 hours, thrombolyzed and non-thrombolyzed. Thrombolyzed before 12 hours, PCI feasible, send him to immediate cath lab and transfer 3 to 24 hours post thrombolysis. And if PCI not feasible, should be transferred to ICU for pharmaco-invasive therapy. Then non-thrombolyzed, PCI feasible, immediate cath lab and do PCI. And if PCI not feasible, immediate thrombolysis. Then if patient reports from 12 to 24 hours and if he is thrombolyzed and if PCI is feasible, early cath lab transfer for pharmaco-invasive approach, because he is reporting within the 12 to 24 hours and already thrombolyzed. So you go, if it is PCI feasible, early cath lab or for pharmaco-invasive, and PCI if not feasible, then medical maximum treatment in ICCU. And if non-thrombolyzed within 12 to 24 hours, and if PCI feasible, transfer to cath lab for PCI if clinical and ECG signs of ischemia present. And if PCI not feasible, then late thrombosis if clinical and or ECG sign of ongoing ischemia present. Now we are going second scenario, non-thrombolyzed. First scenario we have also seen non-thrombolyzed. The second scenario at PCI capable hospital is patient presenting 12 to 20 hours from onset of chest pain. If PCI feasible, immediate PCI should be performed in patient with clinical and ECG evidence of ischemia. Then if acute heart failure and cardiogenic shock are two other scenarios which have unclear advantage from PCI. Forget not, heart failure and shock, unclear advantage from PCI. Then large anterior infarction in younger patient, which is very serious. Large anterior infarction in younger patient may benefit from more aggressive therapy. Aggressive therapy required in younger patient. Then the last scenario, thrombolyzed patient presenting less than 24 hours of onset of chest pain. They are ideally suited for a pharmaco-invasive strategy early thrombosis followed by rescue PCI, bailout PCI. This is the first thing. And if there is failed thrombolysis recognized by wow, persisting or worsening chest pain, number one, or second, less than 50% resolution of ST segment elevation after 90 minutes of thrombolysis in the leads showing maximum ST segment elevation at presentation. So here, rescue PCI is advocated for such patients. In these two categories, you have to do rescue, bailout PCI is advocated. Then the big seventh point, management strategies and issues in procedural PCI in patients of STEMI. Here what we will do, the primary PCI, pharmacoinvasive therapy, rescue or bailout PCI. So recommendations of antiplatelet and anticoagulant in STEMI in this group, in this point we are doing. Number one, DAPT, dual antiplatelet therapy, aspirin plus P2Y12 inhibitor. All patients undergoing primary PCI should receive dual antiplatelet therapy. Aspirin chewed 150 to 325 mg in emergency department itself. Following PCI, aspirin continued indefinitely 70 mg per day. Then second, clopidogrel, the brand name Plavix, newer and more potent P2Y12 inhibitor, given in loading dose 600 mg before primary PCI. Then a maintenance dose of 150 mg daily for first week, followed by 75 mg daily is recommended. If the thrombolyzed patient has received 300 mg of clopidogrel and is undergoing PCI therapy, additional loading dose with 300 mg clopidogrel should be done. The third, P2Y12, the ticagrelor, the brand name Brinta, newer and more potent. It is a first reversible oral P2Y12 antagonist. Forget not, first reversible, then to oral P2Y12 antagonist. The therapeutic dose recommended is 180 mg loading, followed by 90 mg BD, maintenance dose with a low dose aspirin of 125 mg once, then 50 to 100 mg per day. Here you have to note something. What is that? Exceeding an aspirin dose of 100 mg per day decreases effectiveness of ticagrelor. The platelet inhibition demonstrated by ticagrelor is faster, greater and more consistent than clopidogrel in reducing what? Cardiovascular death, non-fatal MI, instant thrombosis in patients undergoing PCI. It also decreases mortality in patients undergoing CABG, bypass surgery. The major side effects are dyspnea and symptomatic bradycardia, which rarely led to discontinuation of the therapy. The only problems are high cost, twice a day dosing, and reversible action puts patient at risk even after missing single day therapy, as normal platelet function restored immediately. Ticagrelor is contraindicated in patients who have received thrombolysis. Forget not, ticagrelor is contraindicated in patients who have received thrombolysis. Now the fourth antiplatelet, the prasugrel, brand name Efficient P2Y12 inhibitor, newer, more potent and non-reversible. Forget not, non-reversible. The therapeutic dose is 60 mg loading followed by 10 mg OD maintenance dose given with aspirin 75 to 325 mg per day. It is superior to clopidogrel in reducing cardiovascular death, myocardial infarction, stroke and instant thrombosis in patients of acute coronary syndrome undergoing invasive therapy. Prasugrel is contraindicated in patients with prior stroke or transient systemic attacks. Number 2, age more than 75 years. Number 3, body weight less than 60 kg. Currently, it can only be advocated for patients undergoing invasive therapy only. So, the fifth antiplatelet and anticoagulant is intravenous glycoprotein 2B third receptor antagonist. The efzimfotide, eptifibatide, tirofiban. So, we are taking first efzimfotide, the brand name RioPro. It is an irreversible glycoprotein 2B third inhibitor. It binds to receptor with high affinity and reduced platelet aggregation by 80%. Inhibition of platelet aggregation persists for up to 48 hours after the end of infusion. It is approved for use in elective, urgent, emergent PCI. The dosage with PCI planned within 24 hours. It is used in STEMI to prevent blood clots during balloon angioplasty, coronary stent placement and PCI. The doses are 0.25 mg per kg IV bolus over at least 1 minute. Then 0.125 microgram per kg per minute IV continuous infusion for 18 to 24 hours, concluding 1 hour post PCI, not to exceed 10 microgram per minute total. Then dosage in adjunct to PCI, prevention of cardiac ischemic complications in patient undergoing PCI, 0.25 mg milligram per kg IV bolus over at least 1 minute, then 10 to 60 minutes before start of PCI, then 0.125 microgram per kg per minute IV continuous infusion for 12 hours, not to exceed infusion rate of 10 microgram per minute. Very important point I am going to tell. Stop continuous infusion of efzimfotide. Stop continuous infusion of efzimfotide in patient with failed PCI. Means what? Persisting or worsening chest pain or less than 50% resolution of ST segment elevation after 90 minutes of thrombolysis. Then second, IV eptifibatide, the brand name integralin. It is a reversible. Earlier the efzimfotide was irreversible, but this is a reversible glycoprotein 2B third inhibitor. It is a protein found in the venom of southeastern pygmy rattlesnake. It is found in the venom of a southeastern pygmy rattlesnake, out of which eptifibatide is made. It is reversibly prevents platelet adhesion by binding and inhibiting the glycoprotein 2B third receptor of platelets. Effect persists for over the duration of maintenance infusion and are reversed when infusion ends. It is used in patients with high risk features to lower the number of heart attacks in patients who have unstable angina or non-HDFC elevated MI, or in whom invasive treatment is not planned. Also, second point, it is used in patient undergoing PCI, including intracoronary stenting. Also, third point, it is used to enhance myocardial perfusion in STEMI before PCI. Fourth, it is used to enhance incidence and speed of reperfusion when used in large dosage in combination with heparin, aspirin, tissue plasminogen activator in STEMI patients. Also, number 5, used in combination of TPA in acute ischemic strokes to prevent progression to subacute intracerebral hemorrhage. Now the dosage in acute coronary syndrome 180 microgram per kg IV bolus over 1 to 2 minutes, then 2 microgram per kg per minute IV for up to 72 hours. Dosage in percutaneous coronary intervention 180 microgram per kg IV bolus over 1 to 2 minutes, then another 180 microgram per kg IV bolus 10 minutes after first dose, then continuous infusion 2 microgram per kg per minute for at least 12 hours. Dosage in renal impairment if creatinine clearance is less than 50 ml per minute. In acute coronary syndrome, when renal impairment is there, 180 microgram per kg IV bolus over 1 to 2 minutes, then continuous infusion 1 microgram per kg per minute. And in PCI, when creatinine clearance is less than 150 ml per minute, 180 microgram per kg IV bolus over 1 to 2 minutes, then another 180 microgram per kg IV bolus 10 minutes after first dose, then continuous infusion 1 microgram per kg per minute. And last point, which is very important to note, hemodialysis, if you do, safety and using during hemodialysis not established, then we are going to third IV tirofiban, and this is the brand name is Agrastate. It is again the reversible. It is also reversible glycoprotein second way third inhibitor. When given IV, more than 90% of platelets aggregation is inhibited. It has been approved to reduce the thrombotic cardiovascular events, for example, combined endpoint of the death and new myocardial infarction, then refractory ischemia, which are not controlled by OMT, then repeat cardiac procedures in patients undergoing PCI, including those undergoing intracoronary stenting. Then the dosage of eptifibatide. In acute coronary syndrome, loading dose 25 microgram per kg IV infused within 5 minutes. Then post-loading dose infusion is 0.15 microgram per kg per minute IV for up to 18 hours. Dose in renal impairment, creatinine clearance, if it is equal or less than 60 ml per minute, decrease post-loading dose infusion by 50% to 0.075 microgram per kg per minute IV. They may be used in few specific situations, for example, angiographic visualization of large thrombus burden first. Second, slow flow or no reflow phenomenon means blockage of microcirculation. Then it can be used thirdly to bail out strategy to help out of difficult situation in case of use of biloviridine as sole antithrombotic agent. Then fourth is the last but not the least, inadequate P2Y12 loading before PCI. You can use specific situations. These are the four you can use. Then the anticoagulant we have to discuss is the sixth point, is the unfractionated heparin. This is an anticoagulant, is drug of choice for parenteral anticoagulation in setting of PCI and STEMI. Unfractionated heparin given as a bolus of 60 units per kg, maximum bolus can be given 4,000 units, and if in infusion of 12 units per kg per hour, maximum infusion can be given 1,000 units per hour, and unfractionated heparin titrated to maintain activated partial thromboplastin time. Normal, we know it is 30 to 40 seconds, but in therapeutic range of 1.5 to 2.5 times of the control we have to keep, that is 6 to 80 seconds time APTT is kept. Now unfractionated heparin decreased cardiac events rate by 57% and fatal and non-fatal MI by 85%. There was a greater reduction rate of MI with unfractured heparin as compared with aspirin alone. Unfractured heparin subcutaneous is inferior to IV heparin. Forget note. Unfractured heparin subcutaneous is inferior to IV heparin. In setting up PCI 70 to 100 unit per kg or 50 to 70 unit per kg used when combined with glycoprotein second B third inhibitor. Now with glycoprotein second B third A blocker, activated clotting time is used rather than this activated partial thromboplastin time. Here we use activated clotting time to monitor the anticoagulous action. Activated clotting time normal range is 70 to 120 seconds. So maintain ACT in therapeutic range of 180 to 240 seconds and to reach a target INR of 2 to 3. Aspirin is used in all patients as a part of medical therapy. Efzimumab is the only drug whose efficacy has been shown to be durable, lasting benefit up to 3 years, whereas others, integralin, tirofiban and lebifiban, the benefit lasted beyond 6 months only. Overall, there was reduction in MI 40 to 50% in patients receiving the glycoprotein second B third A blocker. Administration of glycoprotein second B third A blocker along with heparin and aspirin in unstable angina, non-stable MI and ST elevation MI associated with good clinical outcome in the early follow-up, that is 30 days and 6 months. Bleeding complications are certainly higher. Most of these are mild with no intracranial hemorrhage, especially when used with unfractured heparin 60 units per kg only. Antidote of heparin injection is injection protamine. 1 to 1.5 microgram protamine per 100 unit of heparin is used, not to exceed 50 mg of protamine in total. Now total time elapsed since heparin dose of protamine injection to neutralize 100 units of heparin. Now if you have elapsed half an hour, then 1 to 1.5 milligram of 100 unit of heparin, then 1 to 1.5 of the protamine is given to neutralize 100 units of heparin. If time is elapsed after heparin 30 to 120 minutes, then protamine is given 0.5 to 75 milligram for 100 units of heparin. And if time after giving heparin has elapsed more than 2 hours, then protamine is given 0.25 to 0.375 milligram for 100 units of the heparin. Now the second antiplatelet which we are using or discussing at present, low molecular weight heparin. Low molecular weight heparin instead of unfractured heparin can be used. Advantage of low molecular weight heparin are following: predictable action as we expect, ease of subcutaneous administration due to higher bioavailability, superior bioavailability have an active effect due to lesser binding to platelet factor 4, which is prothrombotic factor. Longer half-life, fourth point, longer half-life, hence once or twice daily dosing required only. Then fifth, non-requirement for laboratory monitoring by APTT, activated partial thromboplastin time, because it does not have much anti-factor 11, which is anti-thrombin activity. Number 6th advantage, better outcome in clinical trials for mortality and reinfarction. 7th, the last but not the least, small increase in bleeding risk due to low affinity for von Willebrand factor, which is a hemostatic. Then the doses of enoxaparin, that is low molecular weight heparin. In acute coronary syndrome and non-QMI, 1 mg per kg subcutaneous every 12 hours in conjunction with oral aspirin therapy. Aspirin should be given 100 to 325 mg once a day. Duration of therapy at least 2 days and per stabilization. Usual duration is 2 to 8 days. Up to 12.5 days has been well tolerated in clinical trials. Used prophylactically in ischemic complication of acute coronary syndrome and non-QA myocardial infarction when concurrently administered with aspirin. In acute ST segment elevation myocardial infarction, 30 mg IV bolus, 30 mg IV bolus once plus 1 mg per kg subcutaneously once, followed by 1 mg per kg subcutaneously every 12 hours. Maximum 100 mg for the first 2 doses only. Maximum 100 mg for the first 2 doses only, followed by 1 mg per kg for the remaining doses. Now the duration of therapy. Optimal duration is unknown. Optimal duration is unknown, but it is likely to be longer than 8 days. The geriatric dose for STEMI who are 75 years or older. Initial dose 75 mg per kg subcutaneous every 12 hours. Maximum 75 mg for first 2 doses only, followed by 0.75 mg per kg for the remaining doses. Now remember, do not use an initial IV bolus in geriatric. Do not use an initial IV bolus in geriatric. No dose adjustment unless kidney function impaired. Then renal dose adjustment in adults. Mild to moderate renal dysfunction. Mild to moderate renal dysfunction means creatinine clearance if 30 to 80 ml per minute, use with caution only. Use with caution only. Severe renal dysfunction means creatinine clearance less than 30 ml per minute. Then in acute coronary syndrome, unstable angina and STEMI, always administered with aspirin and give 1 mg per kg subcutaneous once a day given. Used in STEMI less than 75 years older, administered with aspirin only. 30 mg IV bolus once plus 1 mg per kg subcutaneous once, followed by 1 mg per kg subcutaneous once a day only. In STEMI patient more than 75 years older, administered with aspirin only, 1 mg per kg subcutaneous once a day, and no initial bolus given. No initial bolus given. Dosage in the setting of PCI for non-STEMI MI and unstable angina. No additional anticoagulant is needed if last dose of enoxaparin was given within 8 hours of PCI. If enoxaparin given more than 8 hours before PCI, additional IV bolus of 0.3 mg per kg enoxaparin should be given. Because antithrombotic effect cannot be monitored easily, physicians may prefer to use unfractured heparin bolus titrated to ACT in this scenario. Now the precautions we have to take with enoxaparin. In case of bleeding, reverse by protamine. In case of advanced renal dysfunction, means creatinine clearance less than 30 mg per ml, then dosing schedule is once daily. Low molecular weight heparin, preferably enoxaparin, should be the standard anticoagulant for acute phase of NSTEMI, unstable angina and STEMI. Enoxaparin antidote is 1 mg protamine per milligram enoxaparin if enoxaparin overdose given within 8 hours. If enoxaparin given more than 8 hours of overdose or bleeding continues. If more than 8 hours of overdose or bleeding continues after 4 hours after first dose, then give 0.5 mg protamine per milligram of the enoxaparin. Now, the anticoagulant aids Bavalirudin. The brand name Angiomax. This anticoagulant has direct thrombin inhibitor property and have significant reduction of bleeding events when compared to unfractured heparin plus glycoprotein second big third inhibitor. Very important in acute STEMI treatment with streptokinase. Never use bilevirudin as an alternative to unfractured heparin. Forget not this point. In acute STEMI treatment with streptokinase, never use bilevirudin as an alternative to unfractured heparin. Now, bilevirudin, that is Angiomax, an anticoagulant, cannot be recommended as the first line strategy for anticoagulation. It is indicated for use as an anticoagulant in patients with unstable angina undergoing PTCA and PCI. If in STEMI, bilevirudin is indicated as a supportive measure for primary PCI with or without prior treatment with unfractured heparin. It is indicated for patients with or at risk of heparin-induced thrombocytopenia (HIT) or heparin-induced thrombocytopenia and thrombosis syndrome (HITTS) undergoing PCI. It is given to patients receiving concomitant aspirin 300 to 325 mg daily. In patients with heparin-induced thrombocytopenia (HIT), it remains a successful strategy. The safety and effectiveness have not been established in patients with acute coronary syndrome who are not undergoing PTCA and PCI. Administration is continued following PCI or PTCA up to 4 hours of post-procedure discretion of treating physician. So it can be given up to 4 hours post-procedure or at the discretion of treating physician. The recommended dose given to patient receiving concomitant aspirin 300 to 325 mg daily. For patient who have heparin-induced thrombocytopenia or heparin-induced thrombocytopenia and thrombocytosis syndrome undergoing PCI, IV bolus of 0.75 mg per kg followed by a continuous infusion at a rate of 1.75 mg per kg per hour for the duration of procedure. It is given. Infusion may be continued in STEMI at a rate of 1.75 mg per kg per hour following PCI or PTCA for up to 4 hours post-procedure, or it should be considered to make less severe risk of stent thrombosis. It reduces the risk of stent thrombosis. After 4 hours, an additional IV infusion of bivalirudin may be initiated at a rate of 0.2 mg per kg per hour, low rate infusion for up to 20 hours, if needed. Then recommended dose for patients who do not have HIT or HITTS, the IV boluses dose of 0.75 mg per kg following immediately by an infusion of 1.75 mg per kg per hour for the duration of PCI or PTCA procedure. 5 minutes after bolus dose, an activated coating time performed, and an additional bolus of 0.3 mg per kg should be given if necessary. Dosing in renal impairment. No reduction in its bolus dosage is needed for any degree of renal impairment. With moderate renal impairment, 30 to 59 ml per minute, an infusion of 1.75 mg per kg per hour given. If creatinine clearance is less than 30 ml per minute, reduction of the infusion rate to 1 mg per kg per hour should be considered. If the patient is on hemodialysis, the infusion rate should be reduced to 0.25 mg per kg per hour. Now, we are going for the anticoagulant, the Fondaparinux, the brand name Arixtra, used to prevent blood clot for people who have had a recent heart attack. It is a selective factor 10 inhibitor and exerts their action indirectly through antithrombin third, which is a anticoagulant like heparins. Fondaparinux is an anticoagulant, may be given 2.5 mg IV for the first dose and then subcutaneous daily for 9 days. Very important to listen. Very important to listen. In acute STEMI, patient undergoing primary PCI not recommended. Fondaparinux not recommended in acute STEMI patient undergoing primary PCI. Now we should approach what? Radial approach preferred. We should have the radial approach preferred for primary PCI when operator is skilled in radial interventions. Thrombus expiration should be restricted to patient with large thrombus burden as a bailout rescue procedure. Bailout rescue procedure for what? Slow flow or no reflow phenomenon. And PCI for acute stent thrombosis. It is recommended to implant second generation drug-eluting stent, especially everolimus eluting stent in acute MI, which is Supremo. Drug-eluting stent, everolimus eluting stent is Supremo stent of choice, unless contraindicated dual antiplatelet therapy or hypersensitivity or requirement for urgent surgery. You have to think something else. Now we are going the big point, point 8, percutaneous coronary intervention of non-complete vessel during STEMI. So we are going for PCI of non-culprit vessels during STEMI. Now first you should know what is multivessel disease. It's common in STEMI, 40 to 60% encounter multivessel disease occluded. It recommends complete revascularization not only in STEMI patient with cardiogenic shock but also those who are not in cardiogenic shock. So, complete revascularization not only in STEMI patient with cardiogenic shock but also those who are not in cardiogenic shock. Now, we are supposed to know here intervention of non-complete vessel. So what is non-complete lesion? We are about to know. Non-complete vessel. So what is non-complete lesion? Which are anatomically discrete, means less than 10 mm in length and have significant lesion, and they are loaded with the thrombus in proximal epicardial artery. This is called non-culprit lesion. Now, presence of cardiogenic shock and heart failure warrants what? Complete revascularization in initial setting. If there is cardiogenic shock and heart failure, then complete revascularization is required. For others, a form of staged complete revascularization seems appropriate. Now, what is complete revascularization? It defines staged PCI of all significant non-complete lesion either before hospital discharge or during second hospitalization within 48 days of the index PCI. Defined as staged PCI of all significant non-complete lesion either before hospital discharge or during second hospitalization within 48 days of index PCI. What is index PCI? That is presence of right ventricular infarction in patient with acute inferior MI is the index PCI. Now, where complete revascularization is decided, it may be at the time of index procedure and index hospitalization. Complete revascularization is required for at index procedure and index hospitalization. Index procedure is a surgical procedure requiring general anesthesia, and index hospitalization when patient is admitted for a specific condition or diagnosis. Now, management of STEMI late presentation. Now we are going for big ninth point of our management of STEMI, that is management of STEMI late presentation more than 24 hours. Earlier we have read less than 12 hours or less than 24 hours, but here it is more than 24 hours. So we have taken some studies, some trial methodology and statistical analysis. The clinical study designs the trial methodology and statistical analysis. So here we have seen the reasons for exclusion of STEMI. We have seen the reasons for exclusion of STEMI. Why? Because patient unresponsive as at first medical contact, number one. Then cardiac arrest was found at first medical contact. Then had a diagnosis other than STEMI. What is that? Ventricular aneurysm with Q wave. Then they did not have symptom onset time or symptom description like chest pain at FMC. So we have excluded the STEMI patients among those. And now the presenting symptoms which we found at FMC included were acute heart failure, cardiogenic shock, cardiac arrest, stroke and death. Now time of symptom onset at FMC was calculated as more than 12 hours. Now patient characteristics were noted what? Nearly half of the very late presenters were women, diabetic, had prior coronary bypass surgery, at presentation had heart rate more than 120 beats per minute, had lower systolic blood pressure less than 90 mm of the mercury systolic, were less likely to be transported by emergency medical services, less likely to report chest pain as their presenting system, had lower left ventricular ejection fraction seen by echo less than 40%. Now very important here, very important point, very late presenters were less likely to be referred to coronary angiography or to undergo PCI. During the index hospitalization, when the patient admitted for a specific condition or a specific diagnosis, they were more likely to develop acute heart failure, have longer length of stay in hospital, were less likely to be discharged to home and more likely to be discharged to rehabilitation center. In multivariate analysis, there were 3 strongly associated points with late presentation. Most of them were diabetic, most of them were female sex, most of them were absence of chest pain. Now if we do discussion, we found that 12% of STEMI patients presented very late after symptom onset. Longer total ischemic time has been associated with what? Large infarct size, increased motility, worse left ventricular systolic function, higher rate of acute heart failure, had more hemodynamic compromise with higher heart rate and lower blood pressure on presentation than systolic. Now, during index hospitalization, they had higher initial troponin level, they were having worse left ventricular ejection fraction, higher heart rate, acute heart failure, indicating what? Sicker patient population. Sicker patient population means patients were all sick. Patients were all sick. Now very important, current guidelines recommend deferring reperfusion in patients presenting more than 12 hours who do not show evidence of ongoing ischemia. Remember, in spite of reperfusion, remember, in spite of that reperfusion with PCI more than 12 hours, with PCI more than 12 hours from symptom onset may attenuate, may reduce the increased long-term mortality with very late presentation. Now study limitation was what? In our study, what was the limitation? Study was done between the groups of the patients, and it was retrospective, comparing the groups. Population was predominantly white, and results are not applicable for other black population. Symptom onset type was based on self-reported data. Self-reported data were there, not by any nursing. Now we don't have information regarding atrial fibrillation. We don't have information regarding mechanical complication of the STEMI. Now the conclusion, the female sex, the diabetes, absence of chest pain are strong predictors of presentation delay in STEMI, and long-term mortality is significantly increased in those presenting very late. Very important point to note, in late comers, patient continue to ischemic symptoms, reperfusion using PCI recommended. In late comers, patient continue to ischemic symptoms, reperfusion using PCI recommended. The period after 24 hours of onset of MI is more challenging. The period after 24 hours of onset of MI is more challenging. There is no advantage routine opening infarct-related artery. There is no advantage routine opening infarct-related artery beyond 72 hours of symptom onset. To open infarct-related artery with a window period of 24 to 72 hours is not known. This is unknown. To open infarct-related artery with window period 24 to 70 hours is not known. If infarct are proved viable one, if they are viable, if infarct is viable, patient subjected for invasive PCI or a conservative ischemia guided OMT therapy. When viable myocardium not revascularized, if you don't revascularize viable myocardium, then LV tends to remodel with increased LV volume. Forget not. Absence of viability results in ventricular dilation and deterioration of LV function. In conservative ischemia guided therapy with OMT, with medical therapy, a greater improvement in cardiac function was observed over time. Function was observed over time. Modalities utilized to assess myocardial viability are thallium 201, technetium and SPECT, FDG scan, glucose, positron emission tomography, dobutamine stress echo, stress MRI, and contrast enhanced MRI. Very important. Routine PCI 3 days to weeks. After 3 days to weeks, after AMI is not recommended. Routine PCI after 3 days to weeks after AMI is not recommended. Not so letter comes. What is not so letter comes? Something must be done by particular time in future. 12 to 48 hours may stand to gain through reperfusion of hibernating myocardium in peri-infarct region. Not so letter comes. Something must be done by particular time in the future. 12 to 40 hours may stand to gain through reperfusion of hibernating myocardium in peri-infarct region. You can take, this is a proposed algorithm for management of stable patients of acute myocardial infarction presenting more than 24 hours. from symptom onset. You can take photograph by your mobile and can read in your leisure time. Point 10th will be our last point. Routine in hospital management of patient with STEMI other than reperfusion therapy. Number 1, all patients should be admitted to ICCU. Second, routine management includes bed rest, analgesic by morphia, sedation by morphia, use of oxygen, antiplatelet therapy, anticoagulation, nitroglycerin, beta blockers, and rhythm monitoring, hemodynamic monitoring done. All patients observed for 12 hours at 24 hours at least. Third point, initial emphasis is on reperfusion therapy. Reperfusion therapy. Having successful coronary reperfusion, patient shifted to intermediate coronary care unit for next 24 to 48 hours. Then fourthly, immediate concern is LFPR by morphine, reduce anxiety by morphine, reduce sympathetic drive to prevent hypotension, tachycardia, ventricular tachyarrhythmia, and laxative prescribed routinely unless contraindicated. Patient permitted use of bedside commode and sitting upright in a bedside chair permitted. Keep patient fasting for a few hours and then initiate liquid diet in the initial 12 to 24 hours to avoid vomiting, which is common in setting of STEMI. Then the fifth point in hospital, oxygen supplementary recommended. If SpO2 below 90 to 92% on room air, and if patient with ongoing chest pain or patient with heart failure, maintain oxygen saturation above 92% in these cases. Then in hospital you have to give morphine as a narcotic analgesic, like 1 to 2 mg IV with a maximum dose 2 to 15 mg IV given. Morphine leads venodilation and decreases period. It can be detrimental in right ventricular MI, leading to profound hypotension. Hence avoid morphine in inferior MI with suspected right ventricular MI on ECG. NSAID, non-steroid anti-inflammatory drugs other than aspirin avoided, as they may cause reinfarction, heart failure, and myocardial rupture. Second, the seventh point, the nitroglycerin with ongoing chest pain should be given 0.5 mg every 5 minutes for 3 doses, given as a buccal spray, given sublingually, or buccal spray 0.3 to 0.6 mg routes are preferred for faster pain relief. If even after 3 doses pain persists, then IV nitroglycerin diluted in dextrose 5% injection or diluted in sodium chloride 0.9% injection infusion given. Ongoing ischemia require what? IV nitroglycerin starting 5 to 10 microgram per kg per minute every 5 minutes given. The dose can be escalated by 10 microgram per kg per minute every 5 minutes and titrated up to 50 to 100 microgram per minute as needed till there is control of pain or systolic BP goes below 100. Nitroglycerin also reduces hypertension and heart failure. Nitroglycerin causes venodilation and period reduction, hence can be detrimental with inferior MI and right ventricular MI. Nitroglycerin contraindicated if systolic BP is below 90 mm of mercury. Long-acting nitrates are not recommended in STEMI because hemodynamic compromise. History use of phosphodiesterase 5 inhibitor during the previous 24 hours for ED is contraindicated for nitrate use due to there will be great hypotension. Now unfractured heparin, 8th point, unfractured heparin anticoagulation with heparin recommended for all patients with STEMI. Heparin recommended for all patients with STEMI as per rule which is already discussed. We have discussed a few minutes back. Then low molecular weight heparin, enoxaparin instead of unfractured heparin can be used, and Advantage of low molecular heparin already discussed. A few minutes ago we have discussed. Dosage of enoxaparin and duration therapy as already discussed a few minutes before. Then the Fondaparinux. Fondaparinux 2.5 mg IV as the initial dose and 2.5 mg subcutaneous OD for 9 days during the hospital stay as an alternative to enoxaparin can be given. Forget not, during the hospital stay as an alternative to enoxaparin. The dose is 2.5 mg IV initial, then 2.5 mg subcutaneous OD for 9 days. With normal renal function, given only with normal renal function. Fondaparinux not recommended with serum creatinine more than 3 mg per deciliter or GFR less than 30 ml per minute. Patient planned for primary PCI or PCI during the course of hospitalization should receive additional unfractured heparin before the procedure to reduce complications related to catheter thrombosis. Complications related to catheter thrombosis. Now the 11th, beta blocker introduced early in course. It reduces mortality, reinfarction and arrhythmic death in first 24 to 48 hours. Oral metoprolol 25 mg soon after admission with no contraindications like heart block, hypertension, pulmonary congestion or COPD is present. Metoprolol titrate can be initiated 25 to 50 mg and repeated after every 6 hours. IV blockers are not recommended in view of high incidence of pulmonary edema and cardiac shock in patients with large infarct undergoing thrombolysis. Then the 12th, chewable aspirin 160 to 325 mg administered at presentation and continued 75 mg for indefinitely. In case of contraindication of aspirin, clopidogrel can be administered. Aspirin or clopidogrel continued indefinitely in patients requiring long-term anticoagulation therapy for atrial fibrillation and mechanical heart valve replacement. Then double and dual and plate therapy. This is 13. Aspirin plus P2Y12 inhibitor in chronic venous thromboembolic disease should be given for a shorter period of 3 to 6 months to avoid recurrent thrombosis. Caution advised for bleeding risk. Available P2Y12 inhibitors are clopidogrel loading 300 mg and 75 mg per day maintenance. Prasugrel 60 mg loading and 10 mg per day maintenance for patients treated with PCI. Ticagrelor 180 mg loading and 90 mg twice a day for patients planned for PCI. When fibrinolysis is the mode of revascularization, then clopidogrel is the only option as the second end platelet with aspirin. A loading dose is not recommended when patient's age is above 75 years. Then the statins, the 14th, routinely administered in higher doses. Atorvastatin 40 to 80 mg daily and rosuvastatin 20 to 40 mg daily for their LDL lowering action as well as pleiotropic effects having multiple effects. For example, lowering cholesterol, preventing heart attack, preventing stroke and preventing death. Statin continued indefinitely to maintain LDL level less than 70 mg per deciliter. Then the 15th, the ACE inhibitor, all patients should receive within 24 hours of hospital admission who are having antiviral STEMI, decreased LV function, heart failure with ejection fraction less than 40. Patient intolerance to ACE inhibitor, ARB may be given. Renal function and serum potassium closely monitored. Mineralocorticoid receptor inhibitor like eplerenone and spironolactone should be started. This is the 16th point with left ventricular ejection fraction less than 40. And if there are features of heart failure, if there are features of diabetes, routine administration of magnesium or glucose insulin infusion is not recommended. Then the 17th point, non-dihydropyridine calcium channel blocker like verapamil and diltiazem avoided as they lead to LV dysfunction. They can be used in atrial fibrillation with the fast ventricular rate when beta blockers are contraindicated. Also used cautiously in left ventricular failure or hypotension. Now the last but not the least, emergency CABG, emergency coronary artery bypass grafting may be needed when infarct-related artery found unsuitable for PTCA, having recurrent or ongoing ischemia, having cardiogenic shock, having severe heart failure, having other high-risk features, having surgical intervention required for mechanical complications of the STEMI. So we have finished today the part second of STEMI, and soon we are going to take the part third of the STEMI, which is much more and much more that important. Thank you very much, my friends. Thank you very much for your kind attention.